Hello, my name is Tim Lahili, and in this video we're going to be talking about Quincy's database parsing capabilities. This is the third video in our three-part series. Database parsing is the most powerful and most complex topic in our database series, so let me spend a few seconds talking about it before we hop into the tool. When we say database parsing, what we mean is pulling data out of a database and putting it into the Quincy grid. So imagine we were looking at a chat application. We've got all the froms and the tos and the messages and all that stuff all sitting in a database. And we want to pull that out, put it in our Quincy grid, and view it as part of a larger picture in the social analyzer. Database parsing allows us to do that. So let me hop into the tool and show you how it works and better explain it just by doing. So we're in Quincy now. We've got a database parsing case open. It's got a bunch of databases in it. None of these have been processed much at all. I think I may have just made this one viewable, but let's open up our viewer and check. But certainly none of them have been parsed. So let's see if anything can be seen. Yep, perfect. That's already been processed. But you would take note here that we've got 1,239 records in this case. So let me open up the parser part of our viewer. And we see we've got two tabs here. We've got SQL import and SQLite parsing. Right now, since we're dealing with an Access database, we're going to do the SQL import tab. We'll explore the SQLite parsing one here in a little bit. But the way this tab basically works is it allows you to run any query, and then based on the results of that query, import the results into the grid. So let's start with the most simplistic query here. We'll do select star from mock data, and we'll go and execute our query. And then we should have results here. Let's pull this over. And we do. We've got our results we wanted, which is basically the table again. And then you can see the column headers, which is good. Now we're going to build the parser, if you will, the way we want to parse this thing. And I'm going to add 4 columns. I'm just going to parse these first 4. Actually, I'm going to add one more. Because you always want to have you need to have an object ID. If you don't have one, it will assign you numbers, but I'm going to go ahead and just use this ID column as our object ID. So we're going to start with ID here, and we're going to call that object name. There we go. All right, like I said, we always need an object name. And then we'll do first underscore name. And I'm pretty sure we have a first name. Yep, profiles in the profiles table. Last underscore name. And you have to, it's case sensitive, it's everything sensitive. If you type these things wrong, it's not going to work. Let's do last name, which gives us a profile there. And then email. And then we want to do email. And I'm pretty sure there's a profile email address here down at the bottom. Let's see. Yeah, profile email address. Bingo. And there's definitely not a gender. So we'll do gender parse. It won't allow you to do special characters or anything. You can't have, oh, excuse me, what am I talking about? This is the column header. Gender, but we're going to do that into a custom column. This is what I meant to show you guys. Erase what's in here. And you can do no spaces, no special characters for this thing. So we'll do, what do we call it? Profile gender. All right, and we're going to call this column a string. You can do string number or date, but string's obviously what's right here. So let's go ahead and save that. All right, and now we can save this if we want. We can call this the mock parser, and we can go ahead and click save, and that will save it. But if we want to run that, we do that down here. And when we run this, what's going to happen is it's going to go through our query results. It's going to find everything that matches this criteria, and it will import it into our grid. And let's review, just for the heck of it, what we're talking about in terms of objects. There are 1,293 right now. And let's go ahead and parse. And it says it found 1,000 records, and it insert succeeded. So now if we refresh, we should see the number of items increase by 1,000. There we go, 2,293. So that was successful. And now let's try to find those contents. We're going to have to change our columns here. So let me remove these ones we don't care about. Oh, profile first name, that's good. So we do care about that one. Let's go ahead. Actually, we want object name. These things. All right, so those are good. And then we need to, we've got first name. We need to add last name. Last name. Profile last name. We had email. Profile email. This one. And then we created a custom column called gender. Oh, did I select it? Profile. I want to make sure. Profile last name, profile email, profile first name. There we go. And actually, I noticed, I didn't realize there is a profile gender already, but we didn't parse into it, so it's not any use to us right now. Instead, we want to go to our custom columns, and we want to choose the most recent profile gender, because obviously I clearly had already created one. Number of slip-ups there, but no big deal. And let's go ahead and apply those changes. All right, and let's make our grid really big. And then let's scroll all the way to the bottom. If everything is right, we should start to see some records once we crest over. There we go. Look at that. So we imported the first name, the last name, the gender, and the email, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, so that's how we do query-based parsing. Let me show you actually really quickly where we saved this parser, so it will be here in our parser database query parsers. You can see the mock parser. As a note, when you select on these things, it's like diabolically slow for it to populate here. If you wait, it will populate, but as you can see, it was quite painful. There's the query, there's the import criteria, and there is a import JSON you can use here if you want. Clearly a little bit of a formatting issue there, which I will take care of. But nonetheless, that's how that all works. Now let's talk about SQLite, because SQLite's a bit of a special case. So I'm going to go find a SQLite database in our case, and then we'll go back to the viewer. So let's do that right here. Category SQLite. Filter. Okay, so we have 3 SQLite databases. I believe none of them are processed. But let's open up our viewer and click on one and see. Go to database and query. Yeah, nothing's showing up, so obviously they're not processed. So let's go ahead and just process this one. Special parser database, SQLite, and we'll just call this 2152. And process that. And it takes a second, so we'll just give it a second. Then we'll click off the record and on the record. And hopefully it will parse. It did. Perfect. All right. And then you can see there are the results. Okay, now previously what we did, of course, was we went to this import. We ran a query. We went to the query import. But this time, instead of that, we're going to go to the SQLite parsing. When we do that, we see all the tables. There's only one table here, but if there were many, they would all be down here. When we click on this, it's going to pull down this table. So don't be alarmed when it disappears from up here, but we'll go ahead and click on this. And there it went ahead and disappeared, so we can sort of hide that. But what we see is that it pulled in all of our columns. And it gave us, if you will, a mapping template that we can use to map this database. As was true before, we need an object ID column. So we're going to go ahead and choose, an object name column. And you have to specify that this is the object name column. So go ahead and click the yes there. And then let's go for our first name. Let's do the same thing we did before. And map that to, well, you can see actually here we only have a set number of columns we can map to. I will make sure the profile columns make it in here. For some reason they're not here right now, but let's just go ahead and use our contact one. And we'll do first name, and then we'll do last name. And we don't have anything for balance, and we can't map to a custom column in this thing. So we're really restricted to these. So we could either pick one of these, and I think there are a couple that might be appropriate. There's some catch-all ones. But well, for now, here, we'll do it in message. I think there's a message metadata section where you can just drop basically anything. So in any event, so we've mapped to fields that we're happy with. Obviously, this is kind of a silly one, but we'll ignore that for now. And we want to select which one of these are critical to the definition of our database. I know that's sort of a complex concept, but what I mean is whichever ones you sort of select as keys, that is going to be what the parser uses to identify databases that are reactive to this parsing, to this mapping, I should say. And what it's going to do is it's going to go through all the SQLite databases, not just this one, all the SQLite databases in your case. And it's going to say, do any of them have a table test data? And if they do, in that table, do any of them have a first name and a last name? And if they do, it's going to attempt to map it using this mapping. So you want to make the mapping as precise as you can, but still be loose enough so that you'll catch all versions of the type of database you're mapping. Anyway, we've gone ahead and made a mapping I'm reasonably happy with. Let's choose a file category. We'll just stick with documents, which is what we did in the last time. We could give it a name if we want to. We could call it, we'll call it, what is this, test data. And we can go ahead and save that. Now, note this use query. You can, if you want, enter a query in here. And then, just like in the query parser, it will use the query to generate. First, it will get the table. It will run it against the query, and then it will do the mapping. So you can get a little bit more complex. You don't have to deal with completely flat databases like you might if you were doing something like this. So anyway, we have saved our parser. We've mapped it the way we wanted to. We're just going to go ahead and click execute now. But before we do that, let's remind ourselves the number of records we have in this case is now 2293. And let's go ahead and execute. It says entering parsers, executing parsers, parsers submitted. It runs as a job. So if we wanted to see the status, we would go to job status, but it's going to run really quickly. We don't really care. So let's just go ahead and remove our filter. and hopefully our number will go up here. It did. It went from 2293 to 2323. And again, now we're going to have to change our columns once more to get the columns we just mapped into. We'll just add them, though, so you can see them as incremental. We map to first name. We did the mobile phone book first name. And last name. And there's a mobile phone book last name. Perfect. And then we map to, I think, message metadata. There we go. Bingo. Apply changes. So those should add our columns. There we go. All right. Now our grid is sufficiently large enough. Let's scroll all the way down to the bottom. And if fate smiles on us, we should see at the very end these 3 columns populated. Bingo, exactly what we wanted. These 3 columns are populated, and they were parsed out of that database. Perfect. Okay, so now let me show you another cool thing. The reason we differentiate SQLite parsing from any other kind of parsing. And I'm going to go into the parsers to show you that. Open up my parsers widget. Now I'm coming to SQLite parsers. Here are our saved parsers. All the parsers we've made over time will be here. If you want to look at them, you go ahead and click on this load button, and it will show you the parser, and all the tables in the database will show up here, and you can click on them, and it'll show you how you define the parsing. And you can, if you have a query here, and if you want to share with somebody, the JSON's here, same as with the other parsers, same as with the query parsers. But what's special about these parsers is that they can be run against an entire case or against a certain number of objects, whatever your filter is at the time. So let me show you how that works. First of all, whatever parsers you want to run, you can go ahead and select. And then you just go ahead and you can actually click set, or you can just click parse. Either way, they will get set. So let me just show you this. If I go ahead and click set, then these ones are the active parsers. And now even if I click off of these and I go ahead and parse, if I've selected a case, of course, they'll run against that whole case. So I want to show you this actually in action. I'm going to go ahead and process some more data. I'm going to show you the number of objects in it. Then we're going to come here and we're going to run the parsers from here and show you how that works. So let's do that. Let's go create a case. We'll call it auto test parsing. Create. And I'm going to skip over the create case part of this and the adding evidence and all that kind of stuff, because you guys have probably seen that a million times. No need to watch it again here. Okay, we finished processing the case. We've got 1,337 items in the case. Let's go ahead and look at that. We'll start our auto test parsing. Log into that. Pull up our grid. Make sure everything looks the way it's supposed to. Okay, there are 100 and so we've got some items filtered out, so let's remove our filters and refresh. So there we go. We've got our 1,337 items plus the root task bookmark, which gets added to every case. All right, and now we want to go try running our parsers. So let's go over to parsers. Come back in. We've got these 2 active. I only really want to run this one. I think, in fact, they're the same thing, to be honest. So let's just go ahead and set this. And then let's choose our parser, our case, auto test parsing. And then we're just going to go ahead and click parse. Just that simple. And it should say executing parsing. Perfect. And it executed against that case. And let's go back into the case. We could check our job status to see, whether it's done or not. I'm just going to give it a second, and then I want to go click refresh because it should run very quickly here. Let's go ahead and click refresh now. And perfect, you can see we now have more items. Instead of the 38, we have 68. If we make our grid big again, and we scroll to the bottom, we should see basically the same objects we parsed earlier at the bottom. Oops, I did not grab that properly. Let's scroll all the way to the bottom. There we go. Perfect. Exactly what we had expected to see, and there it is. Okay, perfect. So actually, one more thing I want to show you. If you didn't want to run it against the entire case, but instead wanted to run it against a specific object or a set of objects, we have also the right-click special parsers, parse SQLite. So you can just select that. You'll get a menu of parsers, much like what we just saw, and you can select them, and then that will run against either the full case, a filter, or checked items. So that's it. Oh, actually, no, that's not it. There's one more thing worth showing, and that is you can only parse an object once. It won't allow you to parse it a second time, and that's because it marks a field saying this object's been parsed. If for some reason you have purpose to parse an object twice, you can come in here to parsers and reset parse status. So it will reset parse status of whatever you have checked or whatever, and then you should be able to process again. So that's it. That's it for the database processing. It's a super complex topic. Feel free to post questions and play around, but it's really powerful if you get good at it. You can build your own parsers. You can make sense of just basically everything in a phone and everything on the internet. It's really, really powerful. So anyway, I hope this was helpful, and thank you very much for your time.